Hello, my name is Austin. I'm the director here at Fishtown Films. You can see our work here on our channel, or you can check out our feature, Citywide, now streaming on Amazon and Vimeo. I'll put the link in the description down below. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to Stumble Upon. I'm Austin.
And I'm Emily. Today we are discussing So Sweet, So Perverse, directed by Umberto Lenzi.
As always, there'll be plenty of swearing and spoilers.
But if that doesn't scare you, the red flag should, because the toxic masculinity of the white knight is suffocating us all.
This episode brought to you by Citywide, now streaming on Amazon.
Rent or purchase tonight. Host a movie night. Invite all your friends over and know that every dollar spent on supporting indie filmmakers like us helps us make the next sapphic indie.
So Sweet, So Perverse is a really wild film to me because there's so much going on in it that seems like it would be the subtext for other films, but it's actually just like straight out in the text between like misogyny, white knight syndrome, queer people being pushed to the side, colonialism, ownership of other people. This really wild conglomeration of ideas to make a film out of them is just fucking strange to me. Like, it's so incredible to me that a film like this ever really gets made.
Absolutely. It's really a surprising film. The first viewing is by far the best viewing.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen the film, pause right now and go watch it. Because this is one that's worth not getting spoiled over.
Yeah.
I don't often feel that way. I don't mind spoilers ever.
Yeah.
But in this instance, this film is superior on its first viewing because you just don't know what's happening.
All of the things that are revealed throughout the film, and we'll go through them, but all the things that are revealed throughout the film are so well organized, so well scripted by Ernesto Gastaldi, that the film just kind of feels structurally perfect.
It's definitely a masterclass in how to execute a film script.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's like, and it all makes sense at the end to be like, oh, this is the linear path to what these people were trying to get. But the path is such a fun one to just wander around in and experience with it and try to be ahead of it. But it doesn't also matter if you're ahead, if you feel that you're smarter than the film or not. The film has enough going on in all these different kind of elements that's unimportant.
Yeah, I actually think that's the strength of the film, is that you're going to be so distracted by each stage of it. Mm-hmm. And now we're assuming you've watched the film, so we're going to start jumping in.
Yeah.
You're going to be so distracted by every stage that you're just going to be so frustrated in that first viewing. Like the whole first act, I was just screaming, red flags, to the characters on screen because, you know, you've got Jean Reno, which is played by Jean-Louis Trintignant, and he's just a dick. He's just pure toxic masculinity. I feel like My Favorite Murder is based on this movie. It's just stay sexy and don't get murdered, and toxic masculinity ruins the party again. And both of those sayings work great here, and people are not successful.
No.
So they didn't know about it, and maybe they would have survived. So yeah, you start with you start with the lead, Jean, and he's just a nightmare of toxic masculinity. Mm-hmm. And then you go to his new lover, Nicole, played by Carol Baker, and she's just screaming red flags at every turn. I mean, you're just, oh, God damn it.
There's not a single person that's in this film that is actually dateable material. Like, in all frankness, Nicole is terrible. Jean is terrible. Danielle, Jean's wife, is full of neuroses.
Yeah. And she's in the closet.
Yeah. Klaus, the burly, smoldering murderer. You never want on like the first lines of your Tinder profile to be like smoldering murderer.
I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah, you would at least know what flag you're getting. You'd be like, oh yeah, well, it was, I died, but I saw it coming.
I feel like the screenwriter was like, oh, I'm going to research all the red flags and put them in the first act.
Yeah, even their good friends, Helene, who is the woman that that Jean is having an affair with at the top of the film. He's having affairs with everybody.
Yeah, he's sleeping with everybody.
He says at some point that the marriage to his wife stopped a year ago when they stopped having sex because in his mind, again, his toxic masculinity, his mind, marriages are only valid or worth pursuing if he's getting off.
Yeah. Yeah. He really distills marriage down to one act.
And it is like, and I think that's something that you're getting at in this is that he is so fucking toxic that you almost feel like it's a parody of what toxicity is.
Yeah.
Except it's played so straight and so earnestly that by the time we get to when he starts having his second affair with Nicole, that we actually have kind of bought into what his, like, even if we don't like him, which I don't think we do, we bought into his worldview. They've committed to that bit.
His earnestness within playing the toxic white man.
Yeah.
It's just a testament to the director and the actor.
Yeah.
He's nailing it.
Yeah.
He's nailing that character because you're right. We do believe him. He's so genuine, but he's pure toxicity. He's like, don't worry about this guy that keeps breaking into our house, that's threatening you and beating the shit out of you is trying to kill me.
That scene
but like,
is so fucking
don't worry
weird.
about it. I don't know why you're so upset. You're so crazy.
I love that he's like, oh, I have a key to your apartment, person who's just moved in. I'm just going to let myself in. I'm going to fondle these knives. And then it's your fault that you're upset that I'm holding a knife. And I'm like, I'm not here to hurt you. You have nothing to worry about. I'm here to help you. I'm going to save you.
It's so many red flags. That's why I think that I think that the writer, Gestaldi, he was seriously looking through a pamphlet of all the red flags, and he was like, oh, I could probably add one here, and I'm going to add one here, and let's add a couple more over here. And I just was screaming at the screen for 30 minutes.
I wonder if there was at a point that he was just like looking at all the like his character breakdowns. He's like, I think this might be too much. And like, no, more. I need more. Like, I'm gonna go the opposite view of what this is. I mean, literally, one of Jean's best friends, Dick Cheney's him. He shoots him in the fucking head.
Yeah, with
like
birdshot.
like literally, these are the worst people.
Oh my gosh, this was foreshadowing.
Yeah,
Dick Cheney.
Yeah. Dick Cheney was like, hold my beer.
Yeah. He was like, I got you. Let me try to elevate this to the next level of crazy.
Oh, you know.
But women are the crazy ones.
You know, this is just a production. I can do this in reality.
As vice president.
Those were quaint days when the vice president shot his friends in the face.
With birdshot.
Like that was a good time in American history. Yeah.
Then when we tried to hang the vice president, it's
for unrelated matters.
Just good times. Yeah. And but to get back to your point about how much crazy is in this film, I think what makes it work is the cinematography. Yeah. Is like the direction and the cinematography. And I think I will speak from the cinematography perspective. It is it's very static. There's movement, like when the cinematographer is on the elevator coming down the stairs and we see Jean-Louis Trintignant running down the stairwell, which is such a great scene as he's running down his old stairwell.
Only something that can be in a European film as well. Because like America, we don't have those fucking beautiful stairwells in any way, shape, or form.
No, or the awesome old elevators, which is what I grew up with. And I love those elevators. And if you don't put the doors on right, they don't go up or down. And if you open them when you're coming down, you can stop the whole elevator and then you could try to crawl out. I'm not saying that we did that. I'm just saying that we did that.
You're just saying that you have a good imagination of what you could have done if you did do that.
We did do that. Okay. And here's the thing. It was fine. It's not that difficult.
You're here to talk about it.
You know what? Maybe there's something to be said about the practicality of these Americans. You just make everything so fucking safe.
What I hear you saying,
and then you bring guns.
What I hear you saying, I have another point on that. But what I hear you saying is we need to bring back the latchkey.
Latchkey kids for the win, man.
Yeah, we're still here. We survived.
We did.
Yeah,
with no help.
I also love that the film's first image is the gun in the back of Jean's car. Yeah. Like, also
this is foreshadowing.
No one gets shot other than Jean in the side of the head,
but
and grazed.
Even.
Like,
There's no blood.
It's merely a flesh wound.
It wasn't even a flesh wound. I think it just sped past him, and he was all surprised, and then he started drinking.
Yeah,
which is an appropriate response.
But like, it starts with a gun, and yet the film is like, no, we can be fucking nuttier. We're a French film with a gun that's our first image, but we're gonna be fucking just off the charts nutty.
Yeah, you're right. It's
Chekhov's gun. Yeah,
Chekhov's gun.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning, and they're like, just kidding, we're never gonna use it.
like, this is only a play, but people will be murdered.
It's fascinating. I don't know. There's so many fun things that are happening, but as I was saying with the cinematography, it is very static other than the amazing zoom-ins, which they go so close that I think that the actor's going to fall over.
Get knocked out.
I just, every time. I don't know if that's from like Naked Gun or something.
Yeah.
But I see the zoom in go and then the actor get knocked over.
Yeah.
But they're awesome. Uh-huh. But that's it. That's really the only flair along with the elevator.
And there isn't a lot of handheld. Like, it's very static. It's very crisp and clean and allows you to take in the images that it's showing you. It isn't giving you subterfuge. And even though there are a lot of characters in the film that are dealing with different emotional strifes and having different kind of breakdowns at different points, like, the camera work lets you see them have that and juxtaposes it with other images rather than presenting you with confusing things to see.
Yeah, it simplifies it so that it allows the crazy to shine.
The only time that it really gets like super stylized in that manner is the time where Nicole is telling Jean about her abuse,
her assaults,
her quote unquote assaults. I say that only because she's such an unreliable narrator, and as you watch the film, you find out that she's the true big bad. She's
awesome.
She's the hero villain. So you don't know if those are actually truths or things she's saying to activate Jean's white knight syndrome, to be like, oh, I will protect you. I will be the person. And that's the only time that the film shows that kind of style.
Yeah, absolutely. We have no idea. And hence the stylization of it is probably to indicate this is an unreliable narrator. But also to be like, you know, oh no, this is bad, but let's not show too much of it. So we'll stylize it so it doesn't feel quite so real.
Yeah, or exploitative. Like, it's not showing you these scenes. Like, even though one of the scenes has Nicole running naked towards the camera, it's through this big red filter that you can barely make out anything on the frame.
And what I find interesting is at the end of that shot, you see what we assume is Klaus's hands held up as if he's framing the shot.
Yeah.
Like it's a director kind of cinematography move where you have your hands up and you kind of frame it with your thumb and your forefinger. And then you go, okay, this is what the shot is going to be. And she's running to the camera and she kind of just, her face kind of becomes neutral in that moment. And so we know he works in photography.
Yeah.
So also the question becomes, is this a staged photography session? Is this a staged scene? So that question is asked by the stylization of the shots.
Yeah.
And then of course you also have the answer. I mean, I personally as a woman would assume that she did get assaulted many times by people, whether it's by him or not, probably by him, but if not by him, by other people. And she's pulling from experience.
Yeah. Like, there's no doubt in my mind with how the character of Klaus is drawn that he would be able to do these things and that these things would be in her past.
Right, especially with that last line she says, like, you have to be nice to me.
Yeah, when he's pinching her arm, like, in the most like scolding a child sort of fucking manner.
Yeah, really weird.
It's so weird.
It's controlling.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you do think that she's in a pretty toxic relationship with him.
Yeah. I only say the quotes not to doubt her, but to say that it's
an unreliable narrative.
Yeah, like, we don't know. She turns out to be such an unreliable narrator to everybody she's interacting with in the film that it's hard to not let that pass.
Which is pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
Because you don't get a lot of films, especially in the late 60s, in my experience, where we have two female leads and they get to play such different characters.
Yeah.
They both get to switch. And not switch with each other and be like, oh, one's one way and the other's the other way. But just their characters are just different.
Like, think about how good a character Nicole actually is. For the first 2/3 of the film, she's not weak, but she's asking for help. She's
abused.
Yeah,
she's a victim.
Yeah, she's putting out a very specific attitude. And then the last third, she becomes the dominant force. Like, that is a fucking great role.
She's a powerhouse.
Yeah, it's like, and thinking, as you said, in the 60s, like, there aren't a ton of films like this. It doesn't surprise me at all that Carol Baker, who is an American actor, moved from the US when she wasn't getting good roles to do these Italian horror films all over the European continent. And like having roles like this, where instead of just being the wife, the mother, the one who looks doughy-eyed, and that there's like 3 people who can play that role at that time in where she was in her age bracket and all of that in America, she gets to come over to Europe and be like, no, I get to be a sexual being. I get to be powerful. I get to have different character traits that I play, and I get to be an enigma. And I think that that's an incredible thing that the writer, the director, and Carol Baker all do together in this film.
It's something that American cinema, certainly at that time, was not particularly interested in exploring. The idea of having more than one female main character that had interests beyond a man.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, with the interest here, I actually genuinely think that Nicole and Danielle would have stayed together if Nicole had kept, if Danielle had been able to keep her shit together.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was, the angle was that it's supposed to be that this was always the plan. But I wouldn't be surprised. Danielle and Nicole probably would have been a good match.
She feels genuinely annoyed by how Danielle is responding.
Yeah.
Like, rather than being like, oh, okay, baby, it's fine. She's not placating her.
No.
Like, the performance is not aligned to be like, this is just something you have to get through, and that she's plotting to kill her. It really genuinely feels like, I'm pissed at you.
Yeah.
Like, you're fucking this shit up.
Like,
keep your shit together. And it might be because she wants to not get caught, but it also could be, like, it equally could be because there's nothing to not support it, I think, in the text, that she actually likes this woman and would not be averse to being in a relationship.
I think what I see in it is that she had a peer. That for a little while, she had a peer. She had a woman who was as strong as her, who had a vision to do, I'm going to fucking kill my husband. He's a piece of shit. We're both queer. We both really like each other. We both have similar interests. And you're as much of a badass as I am. And you're willing to do the hard shit that I'm willing to do to survive, because this is a patriarchal world. We do not have access to money. We do not have access to, at this point, women couldn't have credit cards. You know, a lot of times women had a lot of trouble owning property.
Yep.
Sort of hard to get a good credit rating if you can't get a credit card so that you can get a mortgage. You know, like, you think about the ways that it's really hard to be a woman in this world in the 60s. And maybe she found a peer and she was like, hell yeah, the two of us can fucking own this shit together. We'll get rid of that fucking guy that I'm married to. That's not a big deal. And then she's like, oh, you never mind.
Yeah.
You're not what I thought you were.
And I can totally see the contrary read of being like, okay, well, they had a plan. Nicole and Klaus had a plan in which they were going to get rid of Danielle at a certain point, and they were going to drive her mad, and we're going to get her to look like she kills herself so that we can get away with all of it. I can see that read as well, but I kind of find it more fun and more interesting to look at the film in a way that you're describing, because like, I do think with how Carol Baker plays the part, and even how Erica Blanc plays the part, like how they play it together, they feel very much like a couple for a lot of the scenes.
More so than anybody else.
Right. And as I alluded to at the top, the lesbianism in this film is just right there. It's not hiding. It's not shameful. The reason that Danielle gets murdered has nothing to do with her identity. It has everything to do with how she's handling what's going on.
Yeah, she's cracking under the pressure of having murdered her husband.
Yeah.
Which, you know, that's good.
I could see that.
You shouldn't murder people.
No.
Just get a divorce.
Yeah.
But then you don't get the money and
Right.
he's a dipshit.
Right.
So, you know, I see her point.
Yeah, maybe just fuck somebody on the side, like him.
I mean, and that's interesting too, because she's in a very unhappy relationship.
Yeah.
She doesn't like this person. She doesn't like where she is. She clearly doesn't like their friends. What a messy, gross situation. And again, this is the point of the film, right? The film is rich, the elite of Paris are bored and cranky and they don't like it.
Yeah.
So they're going to murder people, you know? And you're just like, wow, okay, yeah, that's a valid point too.
Yeah.
You guys are all dicks with all the money and all the power. And yeah.
And it's fascinating to think of this film in the time of European cinema that was going on, because we're coming out of Antonioni and a whole bunch of Italian artists who've moved to ennui and are pushing through this idea that nobody really knows what to do with themselves and they're all kind of bored. And so this film takes that kind of art house European cinema that was becoming really popularized and then pushing it to this murder plot that we would, as a viewer in 1968, when this film is being released, be thinking about to some degree Antonioni and thinking about La Ventura and La Eclipse and thinking about these films in which really rich people feel disconnected from the modern way of life. And so this film, taking that, amping up Jean's despicableness and his kind of evil or masculine traits, and then showing how a comeuppance can be. Because Carol Baker's character never talks about being disenfranchised. It's only the upper class that are doing these exceedingly terrible things or continually terrible things, like just shooting birdshot at skeets, literally hiring a black woman to come and strip at a party.
Yeah, so uncomfortable.
It's so awful, but they're doing all these things because they're incredibly bored. But they do have a limit because they're like, well, when the sex worker throws her butterflies off of her nipples, she's like, which is just a very strange phrase to use in reality. Like she's playing a game and she's going to throw these butterfly clamps off of her nipples, and whoever catches them, she first says has to fuck, and then the rest of the party that she's at is like, we're not there yet. We're that's a bridge too far, but they can kiss for a minute. Mm-hmm. And so like they're doing these things that are excessively weird and increasingly strange and dehumanizing, and yet Nicole comes in and is like, I'm gonna murder people and I'm gonna be fine with that because I want your fucking money, and I don't care if I'm gonna get disenfranchised because I get to live a life then.
That was obviously orchestrated by Danielle.
Yeah.
To me, that was orchestrated by Danielle and set up specifically to show the neighbor and her husband kissing and passionately kissing, so that everyone else could say, oh, that's the new lover. Like, to me, that was always staged.
It's funny because her response to it feels genuine.
Yeah.
And in the film, like, it's so well crafted. In the film, we don't know at this point that Danielle and Nicole are lovers.
Correct.
And so when we see Danielle break down while her husband and Nicole are kissing, and run out of the room and start crying, we think she's actually feeling something for her husband when it turns out that she's actually feeling something for Nicole.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that her untested theory of saying, yeah, you come down with my husband and you guys make out, and we're going to set this up, and I'm going to let the stripper know that it's got to be you guys, and we're going to show them all that you guys are a couple, so that when the murder goes down, everybody thinks that you guys are lovers, and you know, all that other stuff. It doesn't mean she isn't surprised by how much it hurts to see it.
Yeah.
That she's not surprised to see Nicole really like kissing her husband and be very passionate about it. And then Nicole could argue, dude, I had to sell it. Yeah. So I can't really be like looking at you, making eyes at you when this is happening.
Right.
You know, so we got a plan, we got to stick to it. So, you know, I think that's part of what makes Danielle's character so interesting. Also, is that when we were watching it, you were saying she's a very fragile character, and she is very fragile. She's newly coming out of the closet, and then her heart is broken by what she has to do to come out of the closet.
Yeah, and when I say that she's fragile, I don't mean that she's like a poorly written character or anything in that regards. I think that she's fragile because she's so well conceived by Erica Blank, by Gastaldi, by Umberto Lenzi. Like, I think they do an incredible job showing her fragility in relationship to first her husband and then her lover.
Yeah,
like,
her abuse.
Yeah. And it makes sense that this would be like her first steps of coming out. Like, she doesn't know how the ground is going to feel underneath her, if it's going to hurt. Like, she's unaware of how her surroundings are going to punish her in some
Yeah,
ways.
I mean, how much she's going to be ostracized from her community.
Yep.
So also thinking along those lines, in part having to kill him is really the only choice because you can't just suddenly be gay in 1969, and also have no resources for money or support.
Yeah.
And then you're going to lose that divorce trial. So you're not going to get alimony. And, there's so many ways that you're trapped.
Yeah. The risk that she's taking outside of killing her husband is incredible. Like, if we could just take that and put it to the side for a second, being out even today is something that is very dangerous in a lot of the world.
Especially this country now.
Yeah.
It's becoming less and less safe.
And so her fragility is related to what her character is, not some construction. Because there are other films in which you watch a character and you're like, oh, they're just fragile-minded and they're poorly written. They're just like, oh, the fragile crazy woman who can't deal with her shit. She's like, no. This all makes sense. She needs this fucking money from her husband to be able to live, to be able to survive in this world that does not allow for people like her.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's just a really forward-thinking film script. Really well executed. And I never feel like they're making fun of the characters.
No.
And that's the thing I really appreciate about this, the direction of this and the way it was shot, is it just feels like they're being really authentic to the characters. As you were saying, even Jean is playing his character so authentically and so genuine in his toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
You're just, brutal, dude.
Yeah.
You really think you can save everybody by just minimizing all her problems and maximizing your ability to execute them when you're almost getting murdered every other turn, and then you do.
Right.
You really can't do shit about this, buddy.
Like his inability to see the danger in front of his face is so fucking awesome.
It is.
It's you're like, wait, dude, you're the one who's in danger, and everyone is telling you that.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
she told her straight up.
You don't know what he's capable of.
He's been hired to murder you.
Yeah.
I didn't want to mention by your wife.
Right.
But she does tell him. Nicole tells him the whole plan, and and he doesn't believe her, I guess.
Yeah.
Or he thinks he's too the power of his penis will stop it. I don't know.
It is. Maybe this is a terrible kind of relation, but it's like America with climate change. Like, no, we got this. We just don't have to do anything about it right now. Yeah. Like, no, it's like the scientists are telling us we're going in a bad direction, but you know what? I'm not going to listen to that.
We're just going to trust that the oil industry is going to do the right thing.
Yeah,
even though it's been documented since the 1970s that they've known this was going to happen and they didn't care.
They've always got our back. But it's like the same fucking thing. He's just sitting there going, oh, maybe I can solve this. Maybe I'll put on my thinking cap because obviously I run a successful business bottling something.
Pharmaceuticals.
Or like, I always love that they're just like, the business.
Business.
They never say what it is.
It's like The Room.
Yeah, it is so obtuse of like the business, the job, the warehouse that he burns down.
Yeah, but don't worry. He's
out of town.
He's out of town. In quotes, but he's not actually. And he tripled its value in the insurance papers.
Right.
And so it was fine, wink, wink, that it burned down, wink, wink. And you're like, so when are you going down for fraud?
Yeah. You seem like your plan is like, can you talk about your plan there?
Yeah. It sounds like what I fear is that poor sweet baby angel, Nicole, the murderer, has all these. She's a sweet baby angel murderer. Yeah. And she doesn't realize that all that stocks that she just murdered him for are probably worthless because he's had a lot of fraud in his business, which is the ultimate joke that we didn't get to yet.
Yeah, maybe, hopefully she sells all that.
Yeah, I hope she sells it real quick.
And is like, somebody buy this from me and then I'll have the money.
Yeah, get the money, girl. Get the money and run.
Yeah, get the fuck out.
Who cares about that business?
Yeah.
That's just skeevy. There are old white guys everywhere. You know it's bad. Don't trust it.
No, don't in any way, shape, or form. God, the film is so fucking funny too. Like, there's that moment where Danielle calls Jean on the phone and he's working and he gets pulled away from some sort of walk and talk, and then he goes into his office and his secretary is helping him with something, and he just pulls the phone away from his ear and is talking to his secretary and to this other person who comes into the room. He's like, no, I hear you. Which
is impossible because you wouldn't be able to hear from a distance.
It's so fucking funny to be like, No, this guy is such a shithead. There's no scene that doesn't underline how terrible a man he is, that by the time he actually gets murdered, you're like, yeah, that feels like his arc.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that whole scene was very weird. Both dismissing of his wife and being shitty at his job, and then finding the locket or the piece of jewelry from the upstairs neighbor when he was like, what?
Before they start dating, he uses it as his way to weasel in.
I'm going to walk in with the key and hand her back her necklace while holding a knife in her apartment, and she has no idea.
Also not weird.
Also, and she repeatedly says, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
And he's just like, yeah, no.
He's like, how about we go on holiday?
How about I fuck you right now?
Yeah.
I'm bored.
In some ways, the film is just a straight up comedy.
It is a comedy.
Until he gets murdered, you're like, it's a straight up comedy. You could just look at every fucking scene and be like, oh, this is really funny. Like, scenario wise, this is really funny.
Honestly, after he gets murdered, it's pretty funny too.
Well, true.
I mean, really? He burned in a car crash and you don't know about all the stab wounds that killed him?
What I love is that they force his wife to see her burned corpse. The police. They're like, you have to identify it. You can't identify it. There's nothing
There's
here
nothing
that can
to
be
see except for his burned hand, but that should do it, right?
Yeah. It's like a trauma dump. You're like, hey, so we had to see this. So guess what? You do too, civilian.
Yeah, you can handle it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Number 23, please. How many bodies are in here?
Like
this room is not that big.
Yeah, there are at least 23 shelves. Or are all the shelves in the cabinets in the room marked? Like, even like the filing cabinets are like one. You're like, one. Can you show me one? You're like, no, I'm just thinking like files. You're like, I need to. Can you just open up cabinet one? You're like, oh, here's some new notes.
No, I like the idea of there being a body in the
like,
filing cabinet because they ran out of room.
Small bodies.
Ooh, just pieces.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but think, while she was in there seeing the dead body, that was the outfit she wore to see her dead husband. And it was just impressive to me because, I mean, of course, all the costumes were incredible.
Yeah.
But the idea that you would put on that uncomfortable of an outfit to go see your dead husband, it really was a different time.
Yeah.
Because now, leggings.
Yeah, it'd be leggings. Yeah.
Leggings and a big ass hoodie.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, fuck you. I gotta see my dead husband. I ain't gonna wear fucking tights.
And the fact of the matter is, the cop should know that she's in on it because she's not wearing the darkest sunglasses ever, so that you can't see how much she's crying.
Exactly. She'd have good sunglasses in that movie, though.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing I pointed out to you while I was watching it, that the most believable part of the film was that as soon as the women got home, they immediately ripped off all their clothes. Not so we could see their tits, though that was the point. For the rest of us that are in there knowing what these clothes feel like, it was, get this off my goddamn body. Because all those clothes were so uncomfortable.
All the heels.
Oh my God. All of the outfits, the tight dresses, the horrible, like they're beautiful looking. They're tights with the garters. It's like, but come on.
Yeah.
None of that is comfortable.
All that confining shit to just like be a little
rip it off. Yeah. Rip it off my body as soon as I get in the door. I believe you.
That would be the drinking game that you should play to it. Like, just take a shot every time they come home and they kick off their shoes immediately.
Yes, of course. That's why now we wear leggings. Mm-hmm. Because it's way better.
Because it's way better. It is nowhere near as confining.
No, it doesn't look as good, but it's way more comfy.
It's also so this film, while it's an Italian co-production, is in English because Carol Baker is an American actor, and the film version that you could rent or purchase is in English, which is amazing because a lot of these films that are giallo-y or giallo adjacent are always in Italian or Spanish or another language, and it's kind of nice to watch one of these that's in English, even though everybody but Carol Baker seems to be dubbed by somebody else,
probably,
and their voices don't always match, which is something that, as I've gotten older and watching films, I'm like, I kind of like this. I find it really charming, the old Italian style of just like doing, like not giving a shit about sound on the day because everybody's speaking a different language anyway.
Isn't that interesting? Let's talk about that for a minute. So for those of you who don't know, they weren't recording sound on set.
Yeah, Italian films specifically. And
so this genre of cinema, all giallos, right, did this, right?
Pretty much all of Italian cinema for that first period through the 60s and 70s really didn't capture natural sound.
Okay. And so as you know from watching other movies, you can tell that we've had sound since the 30s in cinema, in Hollywood cinema. So why wouldn't they be doing that? And I would say that the main reason they probably weren't recording audio on these film sets in the 60s and 70s when the technology was absolutely there was because it's complicated. It's expensive. And it's really hard, especially if they're doing all these really interesting locations, to get it to be quiet enough for it not to suck.
Yes.
On top of it, as you stated, we are dealing with a lot of different nationalities of people. And so this is true in Hong Kong cinema as well, right? When they're not recording sound on set in a lot of Hong Kong cinema.
I'm not sure if that's true. I know that they dub it all.
I know they dub it all too, but I was thinking about the China O'Briens.
Oh, that could be.
So I could be wrong about that.
I know that it's the case in a bunch of international cinema that it would be like that when actors who are coming to the place, like say an American actor coming to China or an American actor coming to Italy, who doesn't speak Italian, would be speaking English in the film, and the Italian actors, say in a spaghetti western, will be speaking Italian, and it's why the mouths move so weirdly versus the dub, is because everybody's speaking their own different language. Like even in this film, you have an American, you have a Frenchman, you have an Italian, you have a German as your four kind of leads. Like who knows how fluent any one of them was in any other of the languages that were being spoken by the other actors. So instead of worrying about trying to make them sound good, instead of being choppy, they're like, speak your own fucking language. We know where the stop is. The next person will pick up and we'll just go and we'll fix it in post.
It's a very interesting style because I imagine it was really complicated on set. But in this instance, it seems like everybody was speaking English, but it might have just been phonetically, not necessarily understanding what they're saying or understanding how to say it.
Which is what Jackie Chan did in his American films at the beginning of his career. He didn't speak English very well at all. And so he would have people behind the actor that he was talking to holding up signs with the words, and he would just sell it.
Ooh, wow. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
One of the many things that Jackie Chan was really good at was selling.
And sexism.
Yes. But that, like, for this purposes, we're not going to focus on his sexism. No. We can focus on his.
I do love him though.
Yeah, on his selling of the bit.
It's really interesting, and sorry, I thought I heard squeaky.
I think it was my chair.
It's a really interesting style, and as filmmakers, I honestly would love to do that. I would love to make a movie where we didn't fucking care about audio and we just shot it. And we had a great time, and then we captured audio later and did it. And since we have an incredible sound engineer in Emma Butt, who's based in London and is an incredible sound engineer, worked on Game of Thrones and our movie Citywide, which you can rent on Amazon right now.
Good segue.
So why don't you do that? That would be amazing. I would really love to do that, but I also understand that it isn't easier. I think the thing that I'd like to point out to people who don't work in cinema, that's not an easier way to do a film. It's just as difficult because now you not only have to record everybody later and try to sync it up as best you can, because contemporary cinema would never stand for that much variety in the dubbing.
Yeah.
But you have to get all the other sounds too. You got to get the birds chirping, you got to get the street sounds, you got to get the wind going, you got to record them in a way that makes the room feel appropriate to the size of where they're standing in the film, as well as where they're recording the sound. You can't just record them all in a booth and like hope it works when they're walking on the street, and the next scene they're in a small room, and then the next scene they're in an auditorium. You know, the way sound moves is so different depending on your location.
Yeah, it's not something that you actually realize how much sound changes based on location until you are focused on it.
Yeah, like, pay attention the next time you're on a walk. Listen to how the sound is different for the person you're talking with depending on where you are. And then watch a movie and pay attention to how do we build that world. Sound is another character in the film. I really felt like I learned that with making Citywide, was just how important the finality of the sound was to build the world. Like Emma helped us make Philadelphia feel real with the way she engineered the sound of the film.
And it also speaks to how incredible the sound engineers in the giallos, like in this film, are, because even though you can see some of the dubbing not match up 100%, the world sounds full. They did such an exceptional job, the sound department, the Foley department, the mix, to make this world sound really clear and concise. There is, even though it feels a bit antiquated, the system of doing that now, it was such a workable system for them. Like from Fellini Lenzi, like them all doing this. It didn't matter. Like Pasolini's doing this. Like the best, whoever you think of as your favorite Italian filmmaker was doing this at this point of time. Mm-hmm. So like Leone was doing this. Like it's incredible.
And so it's also an art form in learning how to watch this kind of cinema. Mm-hmm. I think if you're only digesting contemporary American Hollywood cinema, mm-hmm. then you're not going to be familiar with this, and maybe you're going to dismiss it mm-hmm. as not good enough or not weird. Professional, or just unsettling. And so we challenge you to continue to try to devour cinema, which makes you uncomfortable, mm-hmm. which isn't what you're used to, because you'll become a better cinephile the more you devour stuff you don't know right now that makes you slightly uncomfortable.
It is truly like learning a new language. You have this other language to be accessed. You can watch something by Elio Petri. You could be watching something by Elio Petri, like A Quiet Place in the Country with Franco Nero and Vanessa Redgrave, and see an incredible film that is a horror film that is just fucking awesome, and see a different way in which the language of cinema can tell you a story. And that in some ways we have limited ourselves to a specific style and said that this is the house style and anything outside of it is wrong, mm-hmm. or anything outside of it is bad maybe. Mm-hmm. And it should be diminished or ridiculed because it's not exactly what this other style is. And that's part of the reason to watch a film like So Sweet, So Perverse, because the style of it is so different from what we have in our cinema today. Mm-hmm. And it's not worse for that. It's better for that because it gives us a fuller picture of how cinema as an art form has been made and can tell a story.
Absolutely. And I mean, here we go. Let's just talk about TikTok for a second. People are devouring hours and hours of TikTok a day, right? Mm-hmm. And most of it is poorly made, with terrible sound and terrible camera work and terrible cameras.
Yeah.
They're using phones, right?
Yeah.
And it's crap.
Yeah.
But we're okay with it because we're like, well, I mean, it's TikTok. I mean, what do we expect as mm-hmm. regular people? Influencers are shitty fucking camera operators. Yeah. I want to be very clear when I say that. I don't care how good the camera is that they finally bought because they have 1 million followers or what, but they are not cinematographers and they do not treat it as an art form. That's fine. You're an influencer. You're not an artist. I'm cool with that. Mm-hmm. But like, you are comfortable watching, I am comfortable watching plenty of YouTube videos made by hikers that are hiking the PCT or the Appalachian Trail or fill in the blank, whatever, the Pacific Northwest Trail. And more often than not, they're absolutely crap at it. Mm-hmm. They're absolutely shit at it because their main job is to hike, right? And then they document this thing. Mm-hmm. But I'm comfortable watching it even though it's absolutely shitty, just like you guys are. Yeah. And so it's like, be more open for your cinema as well. Yeah. Obviously you are, because you're sitting here talking with us about this giallo film. But like, go further, push yourself even farther down the rabbit hole of what other cinema could be instead of just accepting what is the Hollywood norm. Yeah. Because you're missing out on storytellers that are way more diverse mm-hmm. than the 3 people that Hollywood allows to make movies.
Right.
And that's my soapbox for today. Welcome to my TED Talk.
Would you like to step down, or would you just like to hover around the soapbox?
Thank you for coming for my TED Talk.
It's appreciated. It is interesting, though, that like we have made allowances for certain forms of media, and we don't make allowances for others. We're like, oh, cinema has to be blank, rather mm-hmm. than cinema is whatever is in front of us that's a film. Yeah. Like, as there are some influencers or people who film who put up really pretty shots, and some of them do a really nice job constructing the scene before they put it out into the world, but others don't. And we can accept both as kind of visual languages, and we don't have to judge one and be like, well, that's shit because it looks bad. You're like, no, it's still the content. It's still at the end of the day how something is told to us, not what is being told to us. Like, when you're watching a film, you want to watch how it's being told. What is the narrative? How is it trying to tell you the story, instead of necessarily what? Because if we focus on the what, we can get, like, even with this film, you could go, well, they're killing the lesbian character. That's what's happening. It's like, but how is that happening?
Yeah.
What is the narrative that works around her murder? What is happening in the scenes previous and post? How does that affect the story that it's telling? Not focusing specifically on the what, because the what becomes so binary in its answer that you will either find yourself on the pro or con side of it, and that leaves very, very little nuance to a conversation.
Yeah, definitely be wary of the binary. I mean, I feel like that should be a t-shirt. Yeah. Be wary of the binary. Yeah. There's not black and white. There's not good and evil, and there sure shit isn't male or female. Okay, right. There's no there's no need for the binary. Yeah. Let's lose it. Let's diversify everything, and like enjoy your cinema by actually taking away that conversation. I think or not taking away that conversation rather, but engaging in that conversation.
Yeah, by maybe devaluing the binary and pushing forward this more fluid, this more open-ended conversation where we can have a deeper human conversation about something rather than just a right and wrong.
Right, because I mean that goes back to our conversation we've had before on this podcast about regional cinema, which is that we need to bring back regional cinema. Yeah. We need to stop saying that we have 3 female directors and they're all famous actors and you all know exactly who they are and they're all white women and therefore we did it. We beat sexism. Yeah. Like that's fucking boring. Yeah. Let's have regional cinema. And so Austin, I'll let you talk a little bit about what regional cinema is to remind anybody who doesn't know what it is.
Okay, well, regional cinema was something that was very, very apparent in the 70s, 60s, 70s, a little bit earlier and a little bit later. It kind of died off by the 90s and died off mostly when the blockbuster came around and it became, America just became Hollywood cinema. Like, and still today, there are filmmakers out there working in regional areas and telling regional stories, but the idea that they get to a larger audience than whatever their friend network can create because there aren't cinemas set up anymore to show like just regional films like every week, like the drive-ins that exist now today only really show the films that are first run rather than something like Mahoning, which shows old films and regional films. Like some of my best times at Mahoning have been seeing films like Axe, which is a weird fucking North Carolinian film from the 70s that I cannot recommend enough because it's just a fun, strange film that feels like pre-Lynch.
And to explain what Mahoning is, Mahoning Drive-In, if you were in the Philadelphia or New York City area, is a drive-in that was built in 1949.
It's celebrating its 75th anniversary this year.
Yeah, this is the 75th anniversary of Mahoning Drive-In. It's in the Poconos, so you drive up to the quote mountains. It's hard to call the Poconos mountains because when you're from the Northwest or from the Alps,
our West Coast is showing.
we know what mountains are, and these aren't them. Yeah, but they're super cute little hills, and
they're trying.
They're cute. But you drive up to Mahoning Drive-In, and it is this really wonderful experience. If you love cinema, this is a place for you. These are your people. They always tell us, welcome home when we show up. It's so great. So definitely go check out Mahoning if you're in the New York City or Philadelphia area. It's not that far, about an hour and a half from Philly. And you can camp there. Yeah. It's really fun. So that's what Mahoning is. But yeah, back to the argument for regional cinema. Yes, imagine if we had a movie theater here in Philly that played local Eastern Seaboard films, like films from Boston and films from New York and films from Philly and films from Maryland and DC area. And you could go sit down and watch and like get to know your directors because guess what? We can drive there. We can come see it. We can come share with you what we've been working on and build a community.
And I also think that absolutely that. But I also think that it's important for us to see how people in other cities live, not by how Hollywood tells us they do, but like we would all benefit from seeing how people in Oklahoma see their world cinematically, how people in Louisiana see their world cinematically.
Like Beasts of the Southern Wild, I would say is a regional film.
It is, but it has a huge budget.
Right.
Like I'm thinking.
So regional cinema is really a very low budget.
I'm thinking things that cost people like under $200,000 to make something that you're just like, there are people who are scraping by, like even in the 90s, while regional cinema kind of died off, there's a huge videotape cinema that came up, and Mahoning actually has a festival of that every year, of like VHS Fest, and it's films that were made on VHS and were passed around from person to person to tell these really unique stories that were specific to areas, because it's not like if you're filming on VHS you have the money to make a huge budget film. No. You're just doing it the best you can, and in some ways our inability to connect is, I feel, in part to our inability to see what's happening in our huge fucking country all the time. We are only told the bad things by the news. We are only told the things that catch headlines. We are not shown the things that just tell a story from a local's perspective in a different town. Yeah,
it's true. I mean, okay, so an example with our film, with the Citywide, is we shot all the bar scenes at the Monkey Club, which is a local dive bar owned by a friend of ours. And it's a very Philly space. And we didn't change a thing about it. It is exactly as the bar was shot, exactly as the bar is. And there's an authenticity to it. The way you see the streets of Philly and Citywide, they don't look like that anymore.
No.
Things have changed. Construction has gone up. Murals are gone. There's so much that has changed since we shot it. And we shot it at the end of 2019, the beginning of 2020, right before the pandemic. So this is only a few years later.
Yeah.
And it's totally different.
In 5 years, so much has changed.
Our short film, Strange as Angels, was shot at a beloved coffee shop called Rocket Cat here in Philly, which is now gone. It is demolished by idiots who didn't know how to do the renovations on it, and it completely collapsed. But if you go on YouTube at Fishtown Films, you can see Strange as Angels, which is a great little horror film, and you can see this coffee shop that was the epicenter of the artistic movement of Philly in the 2010s.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. That's why I say, like, yeah, I support the idea of regional cinema, because I want to see some random town in North Carolina. I want to see some random town in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And like what it looked like at the time they shot it.
Yeah.
And what was important to them. So we argue for regional cinema. Bring it back.
Bring it back. So we're going to jump into our stumble upon, and I kind of want to give a little preface to the stumble upon before we just straight in the films this time. When I was growing up in Seattle, like I would go to Scarecrow Video all the time, and Scarecrow Video, if you don't know about it, it's a mecca for cinephiles.
And it's still there.
It's still there, and it is an incredible space. Like it's like it truly is a holy land, and a lot of it is broken down into directors. So you can walk through the main section of Scarecrow and just wander through looking at different directors who have made films from all over the world, and they just are listed by all of them, by all their names. And some of the films are on VHS because they've never got a Blu-ray upgrade. Some of them are all regions or from nations that
DVDs and Blu-rays
that have never been released here in America. So you have this incredible collection of film that you can work through. And one of my favorite things when I was younger was to walk through Scarecrow and just look at different sections, and I just would stumble upon different films. And I feel like now that we have streaming, where it's really hard to find an algorithm that actually matches what I'm interested in, because what I'm interested in changes from day to day, from hour to hour, it's really hard to be like, oh, the thing that they're showing me is what I should watch now. I feel curated by a person who doesn't understand me.
Well, by a robot.
Right.
And that is the point, right? The algorithm is not only set up to try to feed you what the last thing it is you watched, and therefore, quote, understands you, but it's also set up to feed their pocketbooks.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be Netflix and Amazon and all of the different platforms, Disney, HBO. They're not going to be feeding you what they think would elevate your watching experience or maybe push you down a road you weren't expecting. They're there to make sure that the movies that they spend a lot of money on get viewed as much as possible.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's all corporations now.
And so for this stumble upon, like what I want to focus on is as if I was stumbling through Scarecrow back in the day and I was just looking around trying to figure out what to watch and what would catch my eye and what I would recommend out of that would catch my eye and suggest to you to stumble upon maybe as well. So the first film, the film that I would like to stumble upon, that I would like to recommend, is a film called Axe from 1977. It's a regional film. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. It is one of the strangest films that I've ever seen. I don't know how to describe it properly. Like there's some murderers in it. They escape town. They show up at a farmhouse where a woman is taking care of maybe her husband, who's a lot older than her, maybe her dad. She's mute. It's never clear. No one ever says what it is, what their relationship. It might be.
I always thought it was her grandpa.
But it's like, my point is, it's never clear what it is. And so she then has to fend off these people who were there. And it is very Lynchian in its strangeness and how obtuse it desires to be. The guy who made it made 2 films, and that's it. And like is kind of an enigma. And I saw it at the drive-in for the first time, and I was just fucking floored by watching this film.
Yeah.
So Axe, perfect, wonderful, beautiful, fucking strange thing. Emily, what would you like to stumble upon?
I would also like to suggest that you stumble upon another regional cinema piece called Let's Scare Jessica to Death, made in 1971 and directed by John Hancock. This is a really interesting film that takes place, I believe, in North Carolina.
No, it's in like Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Oh, wow. It really feels kind of a little bit southern. It's a really good film to watch when it's the fall and the leaves are changing and you're vibing on watching a horror film that'll kind of fuck with your head, but not too much. It's wonderful. It's quiet. It doesn't have a lot of characters. It's basically about a woman who has just gotten out of medical treatment for having a breakdown or a psychotic break. Maybe she's been in a psych ward. It's not super clear, but she's definitely she's trying to go to the small town to kind of heal with her partner. And
their best friend.
And basically there's a farmhouse that is haunted. And is she losing her sanity or is someone fucking with her?
And is that person who's fucking with her, maybe she's a vampire?
Yeah. You don't know?
No.
You got to watch it.
Yeah.
It's really, really good. And I highly recommend it. And it's a great example of regional cinema and why we should be fighting for this. So we hope you enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's what I would recommend to stumble upon.
Wonderful.
So thank you so much for joining us today and talking about So Sweet, So Perverse.
Yeah, and as always, you can follow us on all the socials, on Instagram, Fishtown Films, YouTube, Fishtown Films,
TikTok, Fishtown Films.
Yeah, we recommend movies there. We put up other little clips. And as always, if you want to support us, watch our film Citywide. It's now available on Amazon.
Yes, you can rent or purchase it today on Amazon. Citywide was made at the end of 2019, right before COVID hit. And it really is a testament to that moment before everything changed. It's a really sweet, queer comedy / thriller. It's silly. It's fun. It's a great hangout movie. Bring your friends over, make some popcorn, drink some wine, and have a blast. Support your indie filmmakers. But most importantly, support us.
Always support us.
So slide into our DMs and tell us what you think. If you have any movies you want us to recommend or review, if you have questions that you want to ask us, if you just want to talk about movies.
Yeah, we always love to.
We love hearing from you. So thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.